We are going to now, in the second half, continue on with teachings of the Divine Mother. We are really focusing in on her august form. We know that she's a formless form, essentially. That's why she's so subtle and behind the scenes. And she only comes forward when a great soul like Sri Sarada Devi is born, with her now some 4 or 5 million disciples that have gathered around her without any advertising, without any hubbub, just finding their way to this subtle mother principle and discovering a fountain of delight there, bliss, truth, love, light, and healing if it's needed, compassion of the most wonderful kind. It's both gentle and sharp-edged when needed. Like, for instance, she would say, birth and death are very painful, my dear. May you never have to experience them again. A lot of teachers would say, try and make everything, I'm all right, you're all right with the world. But she's saying, birth and death are very painful. May you never have to experience them again. And if you're young and hearing that teaching, then it's one thing. But if you're older and you've had the experience of birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death, which are, according to Lord Buddha, the 6 transformations, while the soul is transformationless, yet here you are going through these transformations, then the teaching makes a lot more sense to you and goes a lot deeper. So that you're looking for a disembodied state. That is, like Vivekananda said, I want to be a voice without a form. Next time I come, I hope I'm a voice without a form. And I can just speak to you. See, who's that? Is that you, Swamiji? You're scaring me here. So, those teachings of Divine Mother are very precious, and we've been sitting here for some 5 hours in the last 2 days, plus the puja last night, another 3, immersing ourselves in Divine Mother wisdom, Divine Mother presence, and we've been giving that an overall title called Dharma. Not Adharma, and not even just Dharma, but even Swadharma, the kind of Dharma that leads us to our highest destiny. Well, the reason why we appeared here in the form in the first place, because embodiment isn't purposeless. A lot of people come here to test their knowledge of Brahman and Mother, to see if they can hold it in the midst of the worst of circumstances. Guess where that is? Here. See? With lust, anger, greed, envy, pride, jealousy, arrogance, grief, sorrow, delusion, and the 6 passions and 8 fetters and 5 kleshas and 9 antaryayas and on, that are listed by the various seers like Patanjali and Vedavyas and Lord Kapila and Lord Vashishta, and by Jesus, and of course Lord Buddha gives you those 6 transformations. And the 9 links to three lifetime scenario rebirth, also a teaching in Buddhism. 9 links of mental conditioning which bring you back in ignorance. So you want to free yourself from those conditionings. Make sure you have your first conscious death so you can have your first conscious lifetime. Your first conscious pick of dharmic parents, if you need to come back for any reason, whether it's due to your own karma or due to helping others. Whatever the reason is for being in the body, then the purpose of life is seen, and you succeed in your mission. You don't miss the mark. Your arrow's already in the fish. So you say, you don't even have to take aim anymore. So we left off here by talking about the bow and arrow. The bow of unerring projection. There's no doubt the mind is a projection. We just chanted that. What should the yogi do with this mind and its projections? Should dissolve them back like bubbles in water. So here you have the bow representing the mind, and if the bow is, say, just like a rifle, you see that the sights are misaligned. You're shooting right at the target and the bullet goes off that way, you see. Hey, a tin can, you see, because I wouldn't say shooting at deer is a good thing. That's the deer mudra, so next time you shoot at a deer, just imagine Babaji's there. See? Don't shoot me, please. But if you're shooting at a tin can, like my father used to teach us kids to do with a rifle out in the prairies of Washington, stop, pull the car over, put a bunch of cans up and shoot. And if that rifle's sight is misaligned, you can't hit it. You can't hit anything. Couldn't hit the side of a barn, as my brother used to tell me. You're a horrible shot. You couldn't hit the side of a barn. So it's just like an arrow. If it's not tuned, the Fletcher, they call him. The Fletcher is the one who fixes the arrows for the king's army. You see, the teaching in the Avadut. You have to have, the arrow has to be just perfect, straight, no edges or anything. So it just goes sliding right off the mount of the bow and go unerringly to its point. And so those bow and arrow teachings we were recalling to ourselves. If you're talking about Ram, a great archer with his bow, Gandhaiva, you see, and then his scabbard of arrows, you see, then you have 4 different things there that he's representing by his very form. One is the arrow in the scabbard, one is the arrow he's taking out to fit in the bow, and one is the arrow already in the bow, and one is the arrow that he already shot a few minutes ago. So the one he already shot is your past karma. You cannot call that back. It has to be relived. You have to. It has to have its effect. It's going to hit some mark. So if the mind is projecting all the time, and it is, even the minds of great beings have projecting powers. They're very, very sattvic projecting powers, like Lord Brahma's projecting powers. Then we should probably make sure that the mechanism that's projecting is as clear and concise as possible, with the best sight, the best aim, and the best aim in end. And therefore then the bow will become this mind that anything it desires it will get. You see, anything it desires it will get. It will get it in the Dharma. Remember, Dharma first, then right livelihood, money basically, and fulfilling your desires. If Dharma's first, then no karma will accrue. So the bow and arrow teachings on both sides. The arrow in the scabbard is, future karma. It hasn't been shot yet. The arrow being put in the bow is present karma. It's about to be shot. You can tell Ram, please don't shoot that. See, put it back in the scabbard. I don't want any karma, you see. Or just tell him, make sure you shoot that arrow really carefully. Shoot it towards Brahman. Or shoot it towards yourself, Ishvara. Make sure I end up with the right perspective. So the spear is much like that too, if we move on. The spear of deep penetration. Whereas the bow and arrow are more like projection, power, and aim, the spear is already penetrated. So her spear, if she uses it on the battlefield against the asuras, she can kill many with one toss, you see, with one throw. It'll penetrate through many of the problems of the ego. So if you're using Mother's spear for, and you should, because remember, I said this is the first book I presented to SRV early on, and the book has not only just the explanation of what each of these articles she's holding in her hands, but it also gives you, in the last part of the book, a meditation on each of them. So now you're meditating on the shield, you're meditating on the bow and arrow, you're meditating on the spear, and you've already read about the symbology, but now you're going to apply it in meditation. So you're actually going to take the spear and penetrate through the curtain of Maya with it. It gives you not a gross weapon, but a subtle weapon. It gives you a tool inside the mind to do some penetration. It's a visualization aid, if you wish, but even more than visualization, it's an efficient tool for penetrating through Maya. In other words, the spear is much like your intellect. If you sharpen it, it will go deep. But if it's dull, it of course won't be as effective. So you can meditate on then each one of these things, and should, as your meditation on Mother. She's not holding those for no reason. She doesn't have 10 arms for no good reason. And people see her murti, or her image. This one's particularly is taken, I think, off of sandstone cliffs in India. I forget the name of the location, but it'll come to me. But SIV used it for its logo, as it were, its representation. And it was on Lex Hickson's altar in New York, in his shrine in upstate New York, in his house. That's where I first saw it. I had my early meditations there in my late teens and early 20s, and I'd open my eyes and I'd see that beautiful picture of Sri Durga there. So later on I brought it out and even colorized it and so forth, and then wrote a book on it and tried to describe those significances of that. Most people would just say, maybe look at the murti and take a picture of it. Oh, how wonderful. But, what's all that mean? What's all that mean is what you need to know. And then you can meditate on it, and as you meditate on it, you can use it. You can penetrate through with the spear, and be effective in your meditations. What you're penetrating is problems. You're puncturing bubbles. Ignorance is unreal, so how can it cause any real doubt? So you're sort of rendering these phantoms you're rendering yourself impervious to them, but you're also rendering them unable to insinuate themselves anymore upon your meditations, because you're meditating and you're having the same blocks come over and over again. Could be attachment, could be aversion, could be attachment to bliss that's keeping you in a certain area. That's one of the classic impediments to samadhi, is getting stuck in subtle bliss and enjoying bliss. A bliss that keeps you from going to the bliss, ananda, which is the last name of thousands of people on earth right now. Don't deliver a telegram to them. Will Mr. Ananda stand up? A whole wave of orange rises, you see. So the last name is unalloyed, uninterrupted bliss, sir. You may call me that. Some of the brahmacharis, even before they take sannyas, will name themselves Ananda. It's their pre-monastic name. And then later on you can get to names like Swami Beyond Ananda. You see, you've even gone beyond bliss. But that bliss is, that you go beyond, is this kind of bliss that can act as an impediment or a barrier to your meditation. So you'll want to take the spear as a force inside of your mind. It's like will, and just penetrate that and be done with it forever. That's what sadhana does for you. It gets rid of these impressions or these complexes and so forth for good, so you don't have to encounter them anymore. That's the point. Would have been never to have had them form in the first place. But what does the yogi or yogini do when the mind has its projections? The mind is dual by nature. We have talked about that in San Francisco last week. It has good and bad, pleasure, pain, virtue, vice in it. You see, it's not like water doesn't have the potential to create green scum, you see. Or it can, in a mountain lake, it can stay pure and free of green scum, you see. But the mind is more like that potential to create dualities. And Krishna tells Arjuna on the battlefield about that. He says, Dvandva mohena Arjuna, beware of the pairs of opposites. They distract the mind and keep it from concentrating on its single essence, its indivisible essence. So to penetrate through those phantoms, Sri Ramakrishna gave a good analogy. He said, there are ropes that bind, but then there are burnt ropes. They don't bind anymore. See, they look like a rope still. They're there. But if you blow on them, they'll just break apart into ashes. So people are laboring a lot under burnt ropes. See, spiritual practitioners who have taken a few steps in forward on the spiritual path are still haunted by these thoughts. of imperfection, these thoughts of lust, these thoughts of anger, and so forth. But remember what Holy Mother said? These things are mere nothings to you, if you're a devotee. They're mere nothings, these desires. The more they come and go, the better for you. She's talking about her children, the devotees, the spiritual aspirants, those who know how to guide themselves and who are involved in working themselves towards that paragatam, you see, that supreme goal that Buddha talks about. Enlightenment, or whatever you want to call it. Nirvikalpa. Mother herself is named after so many of those powerful epithets. Aja Shakti and Brahmakala Rupa. She has all these beautiful names that we often even sing about. Paravidyarupini, Paramatmadarini, Parameswarupini Devi. Paravidyarupini, Paramatmadarini, Parameswarupini Devi. Parashakti Daini, Parabrahma Sakshini, Jaya Parameshwari Devi. Jaya Bhuvaneshwari, Jaya Bhavatarini, Om Tripura Sundari Devi. Jaya Bhuvaneshwari, Jaya Bhavatarini, Om Tripura Sundari Devi. Deva Devi Swarupaya Brahmakala. So those are just a few of the names that I picked out of the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam, where these teachings have been coming from, of the Dharma, and put them into a tune, you see. And just a few of one of the verses, out of the many verses. In fact, I called it the Srimad Devi Bhagavata Matrika Stotram. Nice long title, you see. And I had collected, some, maybe 12 or 15 names to weave into it, because she has so many beautiful names. Then I kept reading in the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam, which is that voluminous text I told you about, and I ended up writing another Srimad Devi Bhagavatam Matrika Stotram 2. And yes, you know where that's headed. Finally a third came out, and now a fourth, which will be on the next Divine Mother CD I'll put out eventually. If there's still CDs around, that is. I still happen to like them. Or the next download that comes at you will be the download from the Mother herself. So this is why we also are fascinated and attracting mothers, because she has names like Paravidya Rupini. See, Rupa means form. One person took the name Lavanya Rupini, you see. So Paravidya Rupini, she's the very form of Para, supreme, Vidya, knowledge. She's the very form of supreme knowledge. That is why we say she's formless, is because she's this swift intelligence that's running through everything, even through the object. The object came out and is made of mother intelligence, see, because it was a thought in the mind first, and then it became an object. You can't preempt things by, trying to ignore the source, the origin which they came from. That's not scientific. You have to proceed scientifically, but not just outwardly to the empty particle, but inwardly to the intelligent particle. Good segue into this new book that has come out from SRE Associations and yours truly, the Jnana Matra, the intelligent particle. It's the third in a series of 5 small books like this that have these charts in them and are talking about quintessential Divine Mother teachings like reclaiming Kundalini Yoga, dissolving the mind stream, which was a big subject here and still is over the last year, and now Jnana Matra, the intelligent particle, and already finished before I left on this visit, Manasana, the mental posture. The superlative, the art of mental posture is the fourth book. The fifth will be White Crane, White Swan. It's not a comparison so much, but a showing of the similarities between Advaita Vedanta and Zen Buddhism. White Crane, White Swan. And you can imagine the cover, what that might look like. And they won't be fighting either. They'll be showing the salient features of each, because Advaita Vedanta in India, 32 generations later, Zen Buddhism in Japan. See, that's accounting for the connections, how Buddhism ran from India to Tibet and to China and to Burma and to Ceylon and so forth, and worked its way finally to Japan. And then in the 50s, actually early on, even when Swamiji was at the Parliament of Religions in 1893, there was the first Soto Zen teacher that was there at the Parliament of Religions with him. So then later on in the 50s and 60s, beings like Alan Watts and others began to get attracted to these Zen Buddhist teachers that were just beginning really to come over from Japan. So that's all this long stream that you connect, you see, of Dharma teachings and how it originated back in Bharat. It's the name of India before it was called India, Bharat, the eternal land. See? So, Mother has been there all along, guiding it. You see underneath, she's that facile, swift, mercurial wisdom that flows, mellifluous flow, see? Unimpeded, uninterrupted, like pouring one oil from one beaker to another. You see, completely rainbow-like sheen of unsplashing. You see, just perfect pour into the next beaker. Do that with water or something, it splashes. You see. So it's that Taila Darajan. It's the flow from one source to another, unimpeded with perfect measure. See? And that's her wisdom that we like to try and describe, even though we come up short. Even the Vedas can't describe her wisdom. See? Now look at the cup of divine essence below the sword. She holds that cup of divine essence too, and quite often, although it might not be in this representation, it is? Yeah, there it is. Quite often it's a skull, the skull cup, they call it, in some representations. Sometimes it's that chalice-looking cup, but sometimes it's a skull. So, it's just like saying, the life essence in every head, and the transcender of death, even, she'll drink blood right out of that skull from the severed head. It's actually one of the 10 Dasa Mahavidyas, cuts off her own head and drinks the blood from it. She's self-sustaining, in other words, is the idea. There's another aspect of her which is Dhumavati, which turns everything to ash. You see, she'll turn all warring factions to ash and start over. She's like the end of Mahapralaya. So the 10 Dasa Mahavidyas are called, are really powerful to meditate on. They're really sobering. And they're not all terrific and wrathful. Some of them are very benign and sweet and beautiful, but it's a good combination of mix to get the mind ready. In fact, I was wondering where that... There it is. Good. Struggle to fathom her, O mind, with every fiber of your being. You will never comprehend her, but your intelligence will be purified in the attempt. So give up trying to know her wisdom. Why? Because she doesn't even know the extent of her own wisdom, you see. So swift and immediate and full is she. Infinite, really. Say full, and you might say something can get full, but her wisdom, is just immeasurable and eternal. So then you should give up that attempt at trying to comprehending her, but you should still try to comprehend her, because that will purify your mind. It's a beautiful line out of one of Ram Prasad's songs. This particular English translation given by our founder, Lex Ixon. Struggle hard to fathom her with every fiber of your being. You will not comprehend her, but your intelligence will be purified in the attempt. Really an English mantra. So that cup of divine essence really is Chaitanya itself, is consciousness itself, is Chaitanya itself, is pure intelligence itself. She drinks that all the time, so she's offering that cup to you. She offered it to Mahisashura too, but he wouldn't accept. See, that's this buffalo-headed god. There's actually, we sing every Durga Puja except this one. We sang Mera Pranatumi instead yesterday, but there's this offering we often give that everyone likes to sing, if you remember. Aigiri Nanditi Nandita Medini Vishva Vinodini Nandante Giravara Vindya Shri Rodini Vashini Vishnu Vilashini Jishnu Nute Bhagavati He Shati Kanta Katumbini Bhuri Katumbini Bhuri Krite Jaya Jaya He Mahishasura Mardini Ramyaka Pardini Shayasute Jaya Jaya He Mahishasura Mardini Ramyaka Pardini Shayasute. So, Jaya Jaya He Mahishasura Mardini, that one who destroyed the demon Mahisha, who is the buffalo, took the buffalo form. He could actually take any animal form he wanted. Talk about your shamanistic teachings in a way for India, but his favorite was the buffalo, so she warred with him for thousands of years to try and destroy him with her 10 weapons. And he would take different shapes, birds, they'd fight in the air, he'd go to a different realm like ancestors and try and hide there, and she'd follow him and fight him there, and she fought him on earth. So different lands, different times, different locations, different forms, always you can see sort of the implication, you see, is that consciousness is taking different forms. And when it falls out of remembrance of itself, it wars. See? That's why it's a pipe dream to think that peace will ever come to this earth. A complete pipe dream. This world isn't real in the first place, so why would you want to bring peace to it? You should probably start looking for peace within. The peace that passes all understanding, that Christ said. Because birds have nests, foxes have their holes, but the Son of God has no place here. Christ couldn't have been more explicit. And you're calling yourself Christians, and you're still attached to the earth? Or you're calling yourself Hindus and you're still attached to the ancestors, to the Pitris, to the Petri dish? Which culture are you looking into? So this Divine Mother is there to help you, and she's provided you with weapons, which are these teachings, and she's even specified the weapons down into these 10 divine articles. There would be more, just like there were more yamas and niyamas in this chart than Patanjali listed. There can also many more weapons and ways of looking at them and using them too. It's symbolic, it's metaphysics, some of it, it's mythological, maybe you might say, but even many of the Western savants have come forward to say that this mythology of India is more than myth. See, it's their ideologies, their icons, their archetypes. They're things that you can borrow from, and even without bringing them into future context, you can use them. You can leave them as they are, ancient and perfect, or timeless would be a better way of thinking of them. And just as you think of them and as you need them, apply them. Swami Vivekananda made this beautiful statement once. He said, there are temples by the thousands, books by the millions, but oh, for 1 ounce of spiritual practice. Temples by the hundreds, books by the millions, but oh, just give me 1 ounce of spiritual practice. See, that Dharma bucket that catches drops. You see, just have some of those drops, get yourself a bucket, start collecting them, and you'll put your foot on the spiritual path and take Mother as your guide. I remember the music I was writing starting in the 70s and 80s. I finally had to make a company out of it, you see, and give it a name and get a copyright and all that stuff. So I just called it Jaima music. Jaima music, victory, the music that, is victory to the Mother's music, basically. And right when I did that, I got a phone call. See, Lex Sixon, my dear friend and compatriot from New York. "Oh, Babaji, I see you've dedicated everything to Divine Mother. Congratulations." And brought it all full circle to me that, everything should be dedicated to a great ideal. If you could be a great ideal, it doesn't have to be Ishvari, it can be Ishvara. You see, Vishnu or Krishna or Ram or Shiva, you see. But you'll find that Vishnu, Krishna, and Ram and Shiva all have Umavati and Radha and Sita, we just sang about, you see, as their consorts. Divine Mother is there, supporting them. As Sri Ramakrishna said about his wife, Sarada Devi, she's my very power. With her, I can't even lift my finger. Without her, I can't even lift my finger, you see. So he put her on the altar and worshipped her and offered his mala to her when she was just 18 years of age. It's called Shodashi Puja. And it's now one of the main holy days of Ramakrishna order, is Shodashi Puja. Also Falaharini Puja, where the fruits of all your work and your action is dedicated to your ideal. We actually had that last night before we offered flowers. The Sangha offered flowers. I said, Om Sarvadeva Sarupaya Sarvadevi Swarupinyaha Arpita Ramakrishnasha Kritishri Charanam Bhuje. And it says, may we offer all, our body, mind, heart, soul, our work, and our spiritual efforts at the fearless feet of the Divine Mother. May she be pleased to accept our offerings. So that's Sharanagata. That's this one of those yamas and niyamas you see is this making a complete offering of everything to the Mother. All right, something about the cup of divine essence. Now the mala of spiritual intensity. We already pretty much talked about that because I've told you about the 3 or 4 echelons of the mala and also the Tripura Sundari, the inner essence of the Mother in the first half, so we don't have to go into that. It is a way of intensifying your spiritual path. But I was giving, and I do give the teaching to people who get the mantra, that mantra can become very boring, or you can become bored with the mantra because it's so repetitive. Maybe you think nothing's going on. But fruits from spiritual life are not like fruits from earthly life. The fruits from spiritual life are invisible, unseen, and happen later, you see. So you'll do something for a while and you'll think nothing's happening. Then, like Ram Prasad, you'll wake up and your delusion's gone, utterly gone. And you'll think, oh, Mother's grace came upon me, took away that problem. But no, it's like Mother's grace combined with 10 years of doing the mala, the mantra, all of a sudden culminated. But you didn't see it working inside of you. See? We would love to see our transformation happen spiritually. See? Unfortunately, we have to see our bodies get old. So we begin believing in old age and disease and death because our bodies get sick and old. So our mind starts saying, oh, I get sick, I die, you see, which is a transformation of Maya that you shouldn't believe in. Even when you get sick, Patanjali, the father of yoga, says, never say I'm sick, say my body caught a disease. So, and don't superimpose any Mayic thing upon the truth. You know, the truth is, keep that truth always in mind. I am Atma Brahma, Pragyanam Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi. I am that birthless, deathless essence. that is the cup of divine essence. And I will drink from that all the time, and I won't quaff the poisonous drought of delusion that Maya has ready for me, hands me readily, you see. So, transformation, you see that whenever transformation you see that belongs to Maya, belongs to nature. I don't transform. I stay the same. So my point is, you're doing the mantra all the time on the beads, you see, tends to sometimes get a little bit boring, you see, so you have to enliven it. You have to sit down every day with a fresh enthusiasm, utsaha, around doing japa practice, going deeper and deeper. So I would give that teaching about that. You see, that imagine your mala that she's holding there, you see, there's a chain. Not a chain that binds, a chain that leads. And it's going across land, and link by link, you're following it, you see, across land. But then it comes and gets into the water, and it goes out across the water and fastens to some buoy out there, you see. And so now it's like, I have to get in the water to follow this chain. That's a new level of commitment, you know. I might drown, or I'll get cold, or put my big toe in first, you know, get used to it by degrees. Or someone will come behind me and push me in like my guru. Ow! That's Holy Mother's teaching too. Anyway, you get in the water somehow and you pull yourself across the surface of the water. You see, it's a second level of mantra practice, is what I'm saying. And then you get out to where the buoy is fastened, where the chain is fastened to that buoy, and you realize that the chain then goes underneath the water, and it's fastened to something down there you can't quite see. It looks like a treasure chest or something. See, so you're intrigued. So, you know, it's pranayama time and so forth, and you start pulling yourself down link by link with this huge breathless state, kumbhaka, right? You don't breathe there. Like in deep sleep, you stop breathing for long periods of time. And no memory cells get killed either. So not like drowning or something. But you may still have fear of drowning, you see. But still, you're adamant. You want to go to the very end of that chain. And so the mantra practice reaches a third level of commitment. So, therefore, intensity. See, it's that mala of spiritual intensity. So you always have to enliven your practice. 2 years ago, I think here and in Hawaii, we gave a whole seminar on mantra. And we used the 10 or 12 charts that I've created on mantra specifically, many with Holy Mother's teachings, Sri Sarada's teachings on it. And we'll do that again sometime, but that will also appear on YouTube so people can see it on their computers. That'll be one of the ones we'll render to a YouTube video soon. So enough said then about mala, since we took it up so much already. The bell of crystalline clarity. It reminds me of the puja last night and intoning the bell every once in a while, the big bell, and then the small bell, using it to signify auspiciousness of offering the garlands and purifying the food and the flowers and so forth. You ring a bell over the rice that's offered to your ancestors. It's really all about purifying vibration, the bell. But I've had experiences myself, and I've heard of other people's experiences. They've said, when I first came to SRV and I sat in its Saturday night puja, and you rang the bell, I was completely entranced. All of a sudden I was focused. The bell of clarity, you see. So if you hear that Durga's bell ring, it's not like, say, hearing, a cracked bell, you see, which was a bad idea. Let's go to war with others. The Liberty Bell got cracked, what's that mean? So it's a different kind of bell. It's a bell of integrity. It's a bell of nonviolence. It's a bell of clarity. And so when you hear it ring, some people will actually have an immediate attraction to that sound. Now, I've noticed other people have a kind of aversion to it. And they say that in the scriptures that the demons have an aversion to her bell. That's why she carries it on the battlefield. Nothing else will work, arrows, throwing the kitchen sink at them, whatever she does, you see. If nothing else works, then she'll pull out the bell, and they'll, everyone will. of course, drop their shields and cover their ears so then she can then use her arrows, spear. So the negativity is the demons, that is the ego with its nails as long as winnowing hooks, and the evil, that's lurking there in the ego, all wanting to manifest itself and cling and grab and take to itself. You see, that kind of ideation or false ideation is rendered null and nil by the ring of her bell. And then, of course, you can use that in your meditations. I'm saying I didn't really start with using the sword in meditation, and I'll leave that for you to read if you pick up that book, 10 Divine Articles of Sri Durga. But, and right on the cover is this image colorized, so you could actually just like put that on your altar and frame it, you see, or have a color copy made, and you'd have this beautiful divine murti of Durga to use. But I am bringing in those meditations little by little as we go through these 10 articles. And here you can use that bell. You just, you might ring it before you sit down and ring it when you get up afterwards. But during your meditation, you can ring it. Because the bell's teaching for Sri Ramakrishna is Tam. The bell says Tam, T-O-M. It really means creation, preservation, and destruction. It really means that everything starts, if you want, with a big bang on the physical level. And then, there's a sustenance period, and then everything wanes, you see, and the vibration dies out, turns into distortion and overtones. And, if you're a musician and you've, had a pitchfork and you've measured it with a microphone and a VU meter, you could see how the tones continues when you can't hear it. And then you can see it. If you have a oscilloscope on it, you can see how it fragments, see, into different tones. But what you don't see is that grand thought about Sri Ramakrishna's Tam, is that everything is cyclic. So you're thinking that the tone of the bell ends in nothing. See, that's the scientific view. There's going to be a big bang, a continuation, and then everything will go back to a void. You see, it's petering out. You see. The original energy is gone. In other words, life leads to death and nothing afterwards. But the yogi looks into the bell and sees that, when the sound is over, it doesn't just go out and disappear. It's still inherent in the bell, you see. So everything is eternal. It's the symbology of the bell is that you meditate on it like Ramakrishna did, and you see that the source of the sound is in the bell. So the source of the fourfold mind, or the Mahat, the great mind, the fourfold mind, all the worlds of time and space, the 5 senses in dream state, the 5 elements in dream state, the 5 senses here and the 5 elements here, and the body, and air, earth, fire, water, and ether, all exist in the bell of Om, or Tam. They all exist there. And though they make an appearance and they go through transformation, there's no end. They don't see that the vibration actually is so subtle that it returns to the bell. And that's going to take some deep penetration, some deep concentration, some deep meditation on the bell. And that's how you're going to clarify your mind of Bhranti Darshana, false thinking, deluded thinking, unhealthy philosophical conclusions, like, say, eternal damnation or death, you see. Now, the last one there, isn't it? Discus of absolute perfection. We've touched on each one of these. Of course, they could be means for whole retreats, but the discus of absolute perfection is that, Vishnu holds the most famous. Sudarshan it's called. He casts that, and it'll cut off the heads of demons just like that, and return to him like a boomerang, you see, kind of thing. Australia has nothing on the boomerang. You see, Vishnu has this chakshu, this discus. And so she has that too. She's actually, there's a story about Divine Mother the gods were having problem with the asuras. Asuras are like demonic beings who want to take over the gods' lands, inner lands these are. And so they were having trouble, and the asuras were actually winning, and the realm of the gods was about to fall and become subject to these lesser beings. So Lord Brahma, who's always the first out the gate, the lotus opens and there he is, right? And then Vishnu comes out of the navel that grows out of, the lotus that grows out of Brahma's navel. Let's see. Yeah, I think it's here. No, it's not. It's a different chart. But there's an icon of that. You can see a murti where Lord Brahma is lying on the ocean of Ekarnava, the ocean of existence, or Vishnu, Vishnu is lying there. And then at the time of the next creation, then lotus will begin to come out of his navel, and it'll open in the sunlight of awareness, and then Lord Brahma is sleeping, he wakes up, you see all the petals of his lotus are different worlds and realms with different beings in it, that he's going to start the next creation. So that story gives us the idea of the beginning of beginnings. This is when Lord Brahma starts the whole shooting match going. Everything's going to trickle down from his sattvic mind out to the five elements, as far out as it can go. So he's always the first one there to consider. So he was under this problem with the rest of the gods, and all of a sudden he said, "Oh, I remember, let's call on the Divine Mother. Nobody else seems to be able to solve this war. Let's call on the Divine Mother." So they think about Durga. And the story is that, each one of the gods gave her, when they thought about her and visualized her, each one of the gods gave her their best quality. So, there's a whole list of divine attributes in this Chandi. I'm sorry, not the Chandi, that's a different mother scripture. In the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam, of this story of each god giving her the best part of himself. And then that put those all together, and she comes out laughing, you see, and has all the best qualities and all the best powers of the gods, and then she goes to war and defeats the asuras and puts them in their rightful place. See? It was beautiful. Another one of those great stories in the Itihasa, it's called, of India, like scriptures like Mahabharata and Ramayana. And they're not the necessarily called the revealed scriptures, but they have more of the stories for people that are helpful. So this discus often makes its appearance there. So if you see, Vishnu is the same way. There's the holding that discus, and she'll cast it, and cut off 1,000 demon heads in one fell swoop. And there's other beautiful representations of that in artists' renditions, where Vishnu will come out of the ethers, just all of a sudden appear, and as if out of thin air, they say. See, riding on Garuda, this great dragon bird, and he'll cast his discus at a certain problem that humanity's having and sever that problem, and humanity will be free of that particular, let's call it phenomenon or catastrophe, pending catastrophe. You see, we'll be free of that. And people will think, "Oh, that was lucky," but we don't believe in luck, and we don't believe in destiny even. You see, we believe in the Divine Mother, and the Divine Mother is the one who can write in the book of destiny and then erase what she wrote. That's how Holy Mother put it. Whatever she put in the book of destiny for you, she can also erase it. So, and we just had this teaching at the break. You see, someone hurt their arm, so he said, "That's just a pinprick," right? Just a pinprick. A sword could have fallen there, but instead of pinprick. So your karma has manifested so much as to be like a train that's headed towards you, you see, to destroy you. And then all of a sudden you look down and there's just an ant crawling along the railroad tracks, you see. So same way, a sword is destined to fall on you, Holy Mother said, but it'll just turn into a pinprick. if you have mother's protection. That would be back towards her shield, you see. Last quote here. Sword, conch, discus, mala, bell, wine cup, shield, bow, arrow, and spear. These are the 10 articles she carries that are indivisible parts of her. Associated with her, they act as purifying and enlightening forces. Purification on 3 levels: Dravya Shuddhi, Kriya Shuddhi, Chit Shuddhi, right? Location, act, and thought, and deed. All of those, purifying those first, and then enlightenment, you see. Or as we chanted this morning, when the mind practices knowledge, moderation, austerity, and veracity, then these mental impurities dissolve and the seer sees the Atman, which was always there. But just due to the limitation of their own intellects, they couldn't see it. So, therefore, te dhyan yoga nagata pasyan. Devatma shaktim svagunayar nagudam. Yaha karnani niktalani tani. Kalatma yuktanya adidishtat ekaha. Yes, you remember. It means practicing the yoga of meditation. The ancient rishis of India saw the Devatma Shaktim, the divine energy in everything, the divine mother, which, though covered by nature and by the modes of nature and the mind, was nevertheless one and indivisible, and which had been incomprehensible to them earlier because of the limitation of their own intellects. So it's something that's ever there, always there. And you have to have your arrow already in the fish. You have to already have shot, used the bow, the arrow, the spear, the conch, the discus, and so forth, in meditation to render your mind pure so that it's an obvious fact that all this is Brahman. Not gotten by growth, not gotten by transformation, not even gotten by practice, and not gotten through evolution over time. It is. As we were talking about yesterday. It is the eternal truth of existence. So, there we have completed, and we have some 15 minutes left. Let's look here at how this process works. We have just enough time for this rather easy chart on Divine Mother Wisdom. Asato ma sadgamoya, tamaso ma joytir gamoya, mrityur ma amritam gamaya. People often chant that and memorize it. Probably don't know what every little word means, but they get the gist of it. Lead us from lower truth to higher truth. Now, when Swamiji first came to this country in 1893, some of the Indian teachers had been there before him, and of course they didn't make the splash he made, but they were defining that mantra as to say, lead us from falsehood to truth. But he stepped in immediately and said, no, there's nothing all good here. There's nothing all bad. There's nothing all true. There's nothing all false. Not on this plane. A person never moves from falsehood to truth. They move from lower truth to higher truth. So he made sure and gave us that definition of that, redefinition of that, asato ma satgamoya. And tamaso ma joytir, tamaso darkness, joytir light. Lead us from darkness to light. And mritjor mam amritam gamaya. Lead us from mritjor, death, to eternal life. It's the eternal life, like Christ was talking about. So, how does that happen? How do we get led that way? If there's a way to show a map of how people wake up, well, Yoga Vashishta, in Yoga Vashishta you'll find the Lord Vashishta talking about the 14 steps of lower and higher knowledge. He too is calling it lower knowledge and higher knowledge, and that's way, way back. Vashishta's teaching is way, way back. He's one of the 10 mind-born sons of Lord Brahma, as we said. So, Sri Ramakrishna puts it this way. Now, know those 3 words, agyana, we sang them last night in the puja. Agyana, jnana, and vijnana. We were singing, Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Chaitaneti Abhidhyate Namastasyai. She exists as Chaitana, consciousness, in the hearts and minds, intelligence in the hearts and minds of all being. We also said Ajnana Rupena Samstita. We also said Jnana Rupena Samstita. And we also said Vijnana Rupena Samstita. Namastasyai, Namastasyai. Ya Devi Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Namo Namaha. Ya Devi. Okay, I know you're all going to go into samadhi here, and I won't be able to finish my class. So, Ajnana, Jnana, and Vijnana. Here, Sri Ramakrishna uses that. He says, an Ajnani, that is an ignorant person, does not know that there is fire potential in wood. A Jnani knows this but cannot bring it out. A Vijnani possessed of Brahmagyan not only knows that fire is potential in wood, but gathers it up, strikes the flame, cooks the food, and feeds others. So, using the metaphor or the analogy of wood, how fire is present in it, and some know it, some don't, and some can actually gather it and cook their food on it, then he gives us that idea of the Ajnani who doesn't know wisdom yet. I mean, he's not casting aspersions here. Kids don't know there's fire in wood. Even when they see it come out, they're not thinking, oh, that fire came from the wood. You see, they're just not thinking. So that's Ajnana, you see. When they start to think about it and they're giving teachings, especially of the Dharma, not just secular subjects, which causes them to think on Maya, but to start, thinking on practical matters is better, and thinking on spiritual matters is best and still. So here you have it, from Ajnana to Jnana, Jnana about the world and Jnana about beyond the world, Vijnana, highest wisdom, right up to Brahmagyan, the highest wisdom. See, nondual wisdom, that would be. That would be the end of knowledge in truth, as Krishna says. And on the other side, another gauge, from avidya, lack of knowledge, to aparavidya, knowledge of secular subjects, to paravidya, knowledge of religious science and philosophy, right on up to Parama Advaita, see, the supreme non-dual teachings. So that's how a person goes from lower truth to higher truth, from darkness to light, and realizes the illusion of death and arrives at the stationless station of eternal life. If you want a more step-by-step, even lower than this is Mithya-gyan, it's false knowledge. This would be like, I'm the son of a barren woman, kind of saying, you see. This just saw someone wrinkle their eyes. What was that? You're the son of a barren woman? It doesn't make sense to me, you see. How can a barren woman have a son? But that's Mithya-gyan. You see, it's a false knowledge that's insinuating itself upon people. Like in the old days, Sri Ramakrishna said, the sun would rise, but there was a demon in the sky called Rahu, see, and it would take a bite out of the moon. The moon would rise, and there was a demon in the sky named Rahu, and it would take a bite out of the moon every night. See, mm-hmm. So the next time it would rise, it would be a little smaller and smaller. So Rahu was like eating the moon. And then, evidently, although they didn't say that, he must have been upchucking the moon. You see, from the new moon on, it was giving him a indigestion. I don't like the world. So actually, Rahu wasn't that stupid. So that's Mithya-gyan. You see, it's not only not scientific and not practical, because sometimes our scientific knowledge can lead us in an entirely wrong direction, can't it? It can give us the practicals, but it can't give us the essentials. And that's what's happening with quantum physics when it takes apart the particle and wants to build a utopian society and ends up with atomic particles changing at a millionth of a second, but can't come to the Shravanavakya, you see, conclusion, the Siddhanta, that all of this is empty. And if I'm going to find fullness, I'm going to have to look not outward, but inside. Kingdoms of heaven are within you. The Lord is within you. See, light is within you. Your ancestors are within you. The gods and goddesses are within you. Krishna, Ram, Shiva, Lakshmi, and Saraswati are within you. See, the 5 deities. How many? See? So, Mithya-gyan, actions which are mindless, deluded, violent, harmful, spiteful, hateful, jealous, and evil.
That's like television.
That's called samsara sagara, ocean of suffering. See, caused by others and caused to you. It's an ocean of suffering. But there are other oceans there. There's ocean of bliss, Ananda Sagara, for instance. Moving on in the short time we have left, from Michigan, if you were going to rise beyond that totally fictitious, so-called knowledge that you're doting on, you see, you'd become an agyani. Knowledge used merely for making a living, intellectualism for pleasure-seeking and power, scholarship for fame out of ambition, and teaching for selfish gains and profits. Basically, that's an agyani. They might be very, very high in station in society, and in religion, and in business, and in politics, and in the church, but nevertheless they don't have the right orientation. So they would be classed as agyanis. 5, that's what I was saying, just in case it was a doubt. Now, rising up from agyana, pavritti-gyan is the subtitle here, and nivritti-gyan. That is, you rise to actual knowledge. First of all, preoccupation with facts and figures. So you have a sort of, penchant for gathering facts, you see, and calling it mine. This is my knowledge. I know more than you. So there's still some pavritti. There's still some worldliness in it. See. Gathering of information for ego gratification. Secular subjects gained for conventional means. But finally, at the level of Gyan comes altruism. Knowledge utilized for altruistic motives. Then the ego is starting to give up its penchant for selfishness, and it sees the first signs of the doctrine of selflessness, you see. Like what Dalai Lama is trying to teach to Western society and the world, basically, is to engender some selflessness, selfless action. And what Swamiji was trying to bring back with karma yoga without any selfish motives. See? Action without selfish motive. Labor as love. See? Work as worship, he said. Beautiful things he would say with the English language. So right there is where the terrain is changing. See, the terrain of all knowledge is making its salutary transformation there. If there's any transformation that's positive, that's the one you want to see in the mind, with the animal that thinks, not the animal that senses only, Vivekananda said. So if you want to believe in transformations, and soon you will give it up here, that all transformations were non-actual. They were in show only, Vivekananda said. And that really the truth was just always there, and you were just stripping away veils. We look upon every soul as a sun covered over by clouds, he said. And because of the layers of those clouds, more layers, the ignorant person, less layers, the wise person, you see. It's just a matter of how many clouds have gathered in front of that sun. Which goes back to our mother teachings of how you can clear the mind of clouds. With the bell, with the spear, with the arrow, with your meditations, so forth. That's your business to do. Then, I'd say this is a good sign in this day and age. Reading of spiritual books for edification. People all of a sudden pick up their first spiritual book, and with it goes away the dime store novel, you see. And all these name and fame and gain books, and all these popularity books, and all this trash in the mind. That's how Ramakrishna called it. One person goes to the temple, sees the image of Mother Durga, and has a vision of her. The next person goes to the temple, sees Mother Durga's image, and just thinks about some trash in his mind. See? What's the difference between those two people, you see? And you'll see that it's a difference in their level of consciousness. So reading of spiritual books for edification is a sign in the West nowadays, I think, of a turn that's being made towards interest rather than apathy for scriptures and spiritual life or disbelief and so forth. There's some interest being developed. After that, you want enthusiasm. After that, you want purification. After that, you want intensification. See? Do intensification too early, don't jump the gun. See? Take it step by step. Get rid of those negativities first. Then study of scriptures under a spiritual teacher. is definitely a sign. That's Dharma. Now you find yourself with Guru, Dharma, and Sangha, or the Buddhists call it Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, the triple gem. I chanted it last night in front of Mother Tara. Om Tari Tut Tari Turi Mama Ayu Punya Jnana Pukting Kuru Swaha. Ayu Punya Jnana. You see, that's the triple gem. The three bodies of the Buddha. Then take spiritual disciplines to, then teach these spiritual disciplines to sincere aspirants. Share the wisdom with others once you know that you have it. It's a very, very subtle art, like operating a machine, you see. So you have to know how to use the machine before you apply it. Then you get to Vijnana, transmitting the teachings to help free or liberate. It's the highest thing, Krishna says in the Gita. Worship of the deities in a non-dual state of mind, which is what we were doing last night. I said that at the beginning of the puja. We're more into the non-dualism. So what are we doing bowing in front of the altars and the images? Because we're worshiping these beings in a non-dual state of mind. We understood Mother to be non-dual wisdom first, then we engaged in worship, you see. Talk about not intensifying an impure mind or attitude, you see. Get that first, then do those very same things that are limiting others, like a priest class or something. But now you're doing them in higher wisdom. Compassionate use of wisdom to remove suffering. We'd all love to do that. We see people suffering. If you're sensitive beings, you wish you could remove that for them. So get the Dharma and then use it wisely, and you will be doing that without even knowing you're doing it, like Sri Ramakrishna. Combine devotion and wisdom in meditation. Two wings of a bird, my teacher said. Devotion and wisdom. And devotion means it's checking wisdom to make sure it hasn't become sterile. And wisdom means it's checking devotion to make sure it hasn't become sentimentalism, you see, or emotionalism, which is a big problem. Get over it. See? So these two wings of the bird leading towards, with meditation, are the best three yogas. And as you notice, the fourth yoga is really pretty much contained in here, isn't it? So he's saying, get higher and higher wisdom, deeper and deeper and more intense devotion, do better and better work. You see, more selfless work, more hands-off work, Vivekananda said. And then acquire direct spiritual experience. And that leads you to Brahmagyan. And that has shown you step by step how a soul will rise from lower truth to higher truth. So let's end with that very same sloka from the Sanatana Dharma teachings of India. And we will end there. Om Sato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Abhira Mayeti Rudrayate Dakshinamukam Tenamam Pahinicham Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from darkness to light, from lower truth to higher truth, from the unreal to the real, and from the illusion of death to eternal life. Reach us through and through, O Divine Mother of the Universe, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.